Is he mine?
8 years of silence, and now you want an answer standing at my son's school?
You intercepted my letter. You lied to both of us. Everything I did was to protect this family's future.
Someone left a warning at my door. About my son.
Tell me everything. No one touches what's mine.
Tamara Hayes checked her watch and quickened her pace. 7:45 in the morning, and Ethan was already 3 steps ahead of her. Backpack bouncing, sneakers slapping the sidewalk outside Lindley Hart Elementary. It was ribbon-cutting day. The new library. The new playground. Cameras. Photographs. She had told him to wear his nice shoes. Then 3 black SUVs rolled to the curb, and the whole street seemed to hold its breath. Tamara's coffee cup slipped an inch in her hand. She knew that car. She knew the way the back door opened before the driver could even reach it, because a man like that never waited for anyone. And when he stepped out onto the sidewalk in a dark gray suit, sunglasses catching the morning light, Tamara felt 8 years collapse into 8 seconds. Daniel Kwon, the man who disappeared without a single word, the man she had promised herself she would never think about again, standing outside her son's school, close enough to touch. Before we go further, if stories like this one pull you in, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens in the next few minutes changes everything. And tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from tonight? The ceremony moved fast in that blurred, underwater way panic makes things move. The principal, Mrs. Okafor, welcomed representatives of the Kwon Foundation, whose generous gift rebuilt this library from the ground up. Parents clapped politely. A photographer knelt for better angles. And Daniel Kwon stood at the podium like he owned the sunlight itself, thanking no one in particular for the privilege of investing in the neighborhood's future. Tamara stayed near the back, one hand on Ethan's shoulder, willing herself invisible. It almost worked. Then Mrs. Okafor, beaming, glanced down at her clipboard. And I have to say, none of this would run half as smoothly without Ms. Hayes and this little man right here, Ethan, who basically runs our reading corner. Soft, polite laughter rippled through the crowd. Every head turned to find them, including his. Daniel's sunglasses came off slowly. His eyes moved from Tamara's face to the small boy standing half behind her, and something in his jaw tightened, like a door closing on a hinge that hadn't moved in years. Tamara felt her face burn. She smiled the smile she reserved for difficult parents and stepped back into the crowd, pulling Ethan gently with her, murmuring something about the restroom, anything to put distance between them. She had spent 8 years building a life steady enough that nothing could knock her off balance. Took him 4 seconds. She managed to avoid him for almost 20 minutes. Then inside the new library, while children explored shelves that still smelled of fresh paint, she felt him behind her before she heard him. How old is he? Daniel's voice was low, meant only for her. Tamara turned. Up close he looked older, sharper, like 8 years had carved away anything soft that used to live in his face. Excuse me. Ethan. How old is he, Tamara? She kept her voice flat and even. That's not your business anymore. It wasn't a difficult question. Before she could answer, Ethan came barreling around a shelf, breathless with excitement. Mom, look, Ms. Gray said I could keep my lucky watch on my backpack even during the ceremony. He held the strap up proudly, where a small tarnished silver pocket watch hung on a leather cord, catching the light from the window. Daniel's whole body went still. Tamara watched the color drain slightly from his face, watched his eyes lock onto that watch as if it had spoken his name out loud, and for one terrifying second, she wasn't sure which secret he had just discovered first. Daniel did not sleep that night. At the Kwon estate, high above Empire City's harbor lights, he sat with a glass of untouched whiskey while Taemin Soo, his late father's oldest advisor, talked about the Han family and the alliance dinner and the timeline everyone had supposedly agreed to. Taemin had run this house since before Daniel could walk, and he had a way of speaking about Daniel's life like a schedule only he was allowed to manage. The engagement announcement is 3 weeks away, Taemin said. The Han family expects certainty, not hesitation. Daniel was not listening. He was seeing a small silver watch on a leather cord, and a boy's eyes, and doing math he did not want to do. 8 years ago. A 7-year-old boy today. It fit together too well to be coincidence, and yet every part of him wanted it to be coincidence anyway, because if it was not... Daniel. Taemin's voice sharpened. Are you hearing me? I heard you. Daniel's voice stayed quiet. I need something looked into. Quietly. No one else touches it. Taemin's eyes narrowed just slightly, the way they always did when something slipped outside his control. What kind of something? Daniel did not answer. He was already thinking about tomorrow, about finding her again, about a question he was almost too afraid to ask out loud. If you have ever waited years for a truth you deserved, stay with me, because what you are about to hear changes everything this story seems to be. Subscribe now so you never miss a single moment of what comes next. He found her outside the school the next afternoon, waiting beside her car instead of hiding behind confidence this time. You can't keep showing up like this, Tamara said, her keys pressed tight in her fist. Is he mine? The question landed like a slap. For a moment, neither of them moved. 8 years, Daniel. Her voice shook, not from weakness, but from years of holding something down. 8 years and you vanished. No call. No letter. No goodbye. I looked for you once, do you know that? I went to that apartment you kept, and it was empty, like you had never even been real. And now you show up outside my son's school in a car worth more than my apartment building, demanding answers like I owe you something. I am asking you a simple question. You don't get to ask simple questions. Not after this long. Her eyes burned, and she hated that they did. Hated that after everything he could still reach the part of her she thought she had sealed shut for good. You left me, Daniel. That was your choice. Whatever this is, whatever you think you're owed, you gave up the right to ask a long time ago. I didn't choose to leave you. His voice cracked just slightly, just enough. I was told to. Tamara froze. What? Daniel dragged a hand down his face, the composure he wore like armor finally slipping. My father was dying. Taemin came to me and said if I didn't cut every tie, if I didn't disappear completely, you would become a target. Men like me don't get threatened directly. People go after what we love instead. I believed I was protecting you. That's not. Tamara's voice broke. That's not what protection looks like, Daniel. Protection isn't silence. It isn't disappearing and letting someone believe you never cared at all. I tried once. He met her eyes steady now. 6 months after I left, I wrote to you. Taemin told me you never responded. That you had already moved on with someone else. That reaching out again would only hurt you more. I believed him. I had no reason not to. Tamara felt the ground shift beneath a memory she had never once questioned. She had never received a letter. Not one word, not in 6 months, not in 6 years. I never got anything, she whispered. Nothing, Daniel. Not one word. They stood there, the truth quietly rearranging everything they thought they understood, while somewhere inside the school, a boy with a silver watch was learning his multiplication tables, unaware that his entire world was about to change. That night, Tamara sat on her best friend Grace Owusu's back porch, 2 mugs of tea going cold between them, and told her everything. Grace had taught the classroom next door to Tamara's for 6 years, and knew her better than almost anyone alive. So he didn't just leave you, Grace said finally. He was pushed. There's a difference, Tam, even if it doesn't feel like one yet. It still doesn't erase 8 years. No, Grace agreed gently. But it might be worth finding out if the man standing in front of you now is worth trusting, instead of only punishing him for the man who disappeared. She squeezed Tamara's hand across the table. You don't have to decide tonight. Just don't let old fear make the decision for you. Something shifted between them after that, quiet and unspoken. Tamara did not forgive him, not yet, not fully, but the fury that had armored her for 8 years cracked just enough to let something else through. The dizzying possibility that she had spent years grieving a man who never actually chose to let her go. Daniel, for his part, felt the ground moving beneath Taemin's careful control for the first time in his life. He found himself questioning a story he had accepted without proof, a letter he never saw rejected. A woman who supposedly moved on but never once in 8 years reached out for money, for help, for anything at all, even while raising his son completely alone. Who delivered that letter? Daniel asked quietly, more to himself than to her. Who told me you never answered? Tamara studied his face, searching for the lie she had trained herself to expect. She did not find one. "You need to find that out," she said. "Because if someone lied to you then, Daniel, they might still be lying to you now." That evening, Tamara let him see the photographs. Not out of forgiveness. Out of something closer to fairness. 8 years he had missed, and he deserved at the very least to see exactly what he had lost. Ethan's first steps in a cramped studio apartment. A gap-toothed grin on his 4th birthday, one candle, a store-bought cupcake. A hospital photo, hours old, tiny fists curled against his chest. Daniel's hand shook holding the phone. "He has my mother's eyes," he said softly. "He's stubborn like you too, apparently," Tamara said, and it wasn't quite a joke, and it wasn't quite forgiveness, but it was something close to both. "I don't know how to be his father," Daniel admitted, quieter than she had ever heard him. "I don't know how to be safe for anyone, Tamara. Not in my world." "Then maybe it's time your world learned how to be safer," she said. "Because that little boy already thinks the world of a stranger's silver watch he found in his mother's drawer. Imagine what he'll think of the man who actually gave it to her." Daniel looked up, startled. "You kept it." "I gave it to him," she said quietly. "Told him it was a lucky charm. I never had the heart to throw away the only thing you left me. I just never told him why it mattered." 3 days later, Mrs. Okafor called Tamara into her office, apologetic and uneasy. There had been concerns raised, she said, about her conduct with the donor family. A formal complaint. Possible suspension, pending review, effective immediately. Tamara knew instantly whose hand was behind it. That night, a car she did not recognize idled outside her apartment for 11 long minutes before finally pulling away. She told herself it was nothing. She checked Ethan's window lock twice anyway. The next morning, an unmarked envelope waited under her door. Inside was a single photograph of Ethan walking to school, and a typed note with no signature. "It is safer for children to be raised somewhere quiet," it read. Somewhere far from complications. Tamara's hand shook as she dialed Daniel's number. "Someone is threatening my son," she said, and for the first time in 8 years he heard real fear in her voice. Daniel was at her door in 11 minutes. "Taemin," he said, jaw tight with a fury she had never once seen in him. "This ends today. What you are about to hear changes everything you think you already know about this story. If it has you holding your breath right now, hit that like button, and make sure you are subscribed before the truth finally comes out." Daniel went straight to the estate, past Taemin's assistant, straight into the old man's study, and dropped a folder onto the desk. His driver, Robert, loyal to Daniel since before Daniel could drive himself, had spent 2 days quietly pulling old phone records and courier logs from the year Daniel disappeared. "You intercepted the letter," Daniel said. "You told me she moved on. You lied to both of us." Taemin did not flinch, not at first. "I did what was necessary to protect this family. My father never asked you to destroy my life. Your father asked me to protect you from weakness." Taemin's composure finally cracked, revealing something colder underneath. "Love makes men careless, Daniel. I could not risk the transition of power on a woman with no name, no standing, nothing to offer this family. So I made sure the problem resolved itself. And now," Daniel's voice dropped dangerously quiet, "the Han Alliance. Is that for this family, Taemin? Or is it for yours? I checked. Your niece is the bride they're offering." Silence. Taemin said nothing, and in that silence Daniel finally understood everything. Nearly a decade of quiet manipulation, one lie stacked on another, all to keep him isolated, obedient, and eventually married into a family that would put Taemin's own bloodline one step closer to real power. Tamara had never been the threat. She had simply been standing in the way. Daniel called an emergency meeting of the family council the following morning. Every senior member who had trusted Taemin for 2 decades sat and listened as Daniel laid it all out. The intercepted letter, the 11-minute car outside Tamara's apartment, the threatening note slid under her door, every thread traced back through Robert's records to men on Taemin's own private payroll. Taemin tried to speak. No one let him. By noon, Taemin Su's name had been stripped from every account, every title, every door inside the Kwon organization he had quietly controlled for 20 years. He was escorted out of the estate that had been his home longer than Daniel had been alive, With nothing but the coat on his back and the humiliation of an entire room that had finally stopped believing him, Daniel did not watch him go. He was already in his car, already on his way to Tamara, already finished waiting for permission to want the life he actually wanted. He found her in the school parking lot, waiting for Ethan's after-school program to end, and for once he did not arrive armored in composure. He came empty-handed, honest, afraid in a way Empire City had never once seen from him. "It's over," he said. "Taemin is gone. And I'm not asking you to forgive 8 years in one conversation. I'm asking for the chance to earn it. Slowly. On your terms. However long it takes." Tamara studied him for a long moment, the man who had once disappeared, and the man standing in front of her now, and found, to her own quiet surprise, that she believed the second one. "Then you start," she said softly, "by meeting your son properly, not as a mystery. As his father." That evening, in Tamara's small living room, Ethan sat cross-legged on the carpet while Daniel knelt slowly in front of him, and told him, gently and honestly, that the silver watch clipped to his backpack had once belonged to him, that the words engraved inside its lid, "Find your way back to me," were a promise he had made a long time ago, and that he was Ethan's father, and that he intended from this day forward to finally keep it. Ethan looked at the watch, then up at Daniel's face, searching for something. Whatever he found there must have been enough, because he threw both arms around Daniel's neck and held on tight. Tamara watched quietly from the doorway, and for the first time in 8 years, let herself cry without hiding it from anyone. We are almost at the moment this whole story has been building toward. If you want to see justice finally reach the people who deserve it, make sure you are subscribed, and drop a comment telling us who you were rooting for the whole time. Some love stories do not end with a wedding, or a kiss under fireworks. Some of them end quietly, with a father kneeling on a living room carpet, finally home. Truth does not always arrive on time, but when it finally does arrive, it can still rebuild everything silence once tried to destroy. If this story touched something in you tonight, you already know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from. This has been another story from Empire City Romance Stories, and we will see you in the next one.